Okay, so do you want to begin? At Dave's request, we cut the green room short today
As
because
soon as
over the
Paula got on.
yeah, exactly. Over the last few days, because Paula said, catch me up on what happened. Well, Dave had his podcast on Thursday, which again ended up with Dave, Robin, and I in the green room, primarily talking about rocks and the things that Dave has found and collected, which are freaking magnificent. I can't take that away from it. But then there was certainly a message that we thought we were supposed to get out to everybody else. And so Dave reached out yesterday, and that was what we produced yesterday. And it was full of authentic Dave and some observations, in the direction that we're moving, what's going on, more interest in protocols. And in my particular case, earlier in the week, because I follow, some tarot readers, and there's like four that I resonate with. I've been following them for a couple of years. And so when they all seem to kind of coordinate around the same thoughts, then there must be something to it. Well, every one of them said that there would be some other opportunities coming my way. And I've heard that before. I don't know how I how should I categorize them, because they come in a lot of different ways. But this week, oh, they were unmistakable. I had got emails to do three interviews, two that would be cute and okay, one that has substance. And the one that has substance is actually a guy that's in England who's been, in this realm for at least a decade, and he was clicked into Lemuria. And just like you and I, Paula, started to do his research, and among all the resources he found me, and that kind of caught his attention. When he reached out, he asked if we could kind of do a Zoom session just to get acquainted with one another. And the intention that we would do that for 15 minutes, put it aside. I knew he had other things to do. Well, an hour and 20 minutes later, um, I had certainly got his attention. He has been, on this journey. He's got followers, and he's planning a retreat to Bali. Now, when I read that on his Facebook page, the first thing I thought is, why do you need to go to Bali? Well, when he talked about it, there was a very good reason for him to end up at Bali and plan this retreat there. So it makes perfect sense to me. But he's used to, having lived in the UK, there's an event, and it's not the Glastonbury Festival, because that's a music event. There's another event going on in Glastonbury at the end of September, and it looks very much like the conferences that we have here. Here's a bunch of people you've heard about before, and they're all coming to present. And on one side, it's the same stuff to me. He said, "You should be there," and I know the organizer, so I'm going to reach out to him and see if you know if he's open to that. Would you be interested in coming to Glastonbury and sharing your information with that group? And then quickly he went on, because his mind went to Romania, where he's been a couple times already, and he's got plans to put together some type of event where presenters would come in as well. So stay tuned. We'll see if and when that goes anywhere. But in the meantime, we'd already charted out what we had planned to do here, um, and introducing people to energetic areas. I think that was after we got through the rocks dialogue the day before yesterday. That was really what we had focused on. That Dave had brought to the table. There were lots of other energetic portals that he was aware of that were opening. And of course, that just triggers me, because over the last few years, each time I go back to Shasta, I see more energetic areas that I don't know that I didn't notice them before, but maybe that's the case. All I can tell you is that there are more of them making themselves present, and that they weren't meant to be a secret. There's lots of people that are being drawn to these places, and we know why. I understand the nature and the idea of the golden tie and how those allotments are coming into alignment vibrationally where the earth is going. And these are the places that these people have been drawn to. Dave pointed out a couple new places. Miami was surprising. And I say that and think that look at the event that happened, what, the week before last with the one, I'm sorry, New Year's Day at the mall. You can't tell me that that wasn't some kind of multi-dimensional event. So it's just as likely that they'll be in those areas as well. We don't really hear much on what's going on in Florida because that's a different environment. But the earth is the earth, and the vibration is going on all over. Where it comes up and where people sense it, that remains to be seen. But uh, there are areas that are more highly energetically charged that I know for sure now, having been to Shasta, having spent this time here near Sedona and experiencing what's here. I had seen orbs. I'll share this with you, and I guess it's going to become public now. The spot I'm staying, the first night that I went out when I got here, first part of November, I took that camera outside and I pointed it up in the sky and I wanted to see what I might capture. And what I did capture was the orb activity that was on the ground here. Well, the orbs have found their way into my space. Not last night, but the 2 nights before that, I didn't get to sleep till 1 or 2 in the morning. And then I slept in the next day because they were here in my room keeping me company. And what I sensed is that it's totally benevolent. It's here to assist. The message I was getting is that there are more of us coming. So I'm going to kind of toss it off to Paula because I've been waiting for Paula to be here long enough to present some of the things on her mind. People have heard from Dave and I over the last couple of days, so it's your turn to step up.
Well, and God knows I don't have anything to say.
Well, we'll get to you. I'm just giving you some more fodder after we listen to Paula so you can respond. Yes, Dave is a fountain of knowledge, and we need to hear what he's got to say.
Now let's let Paula chime in because I believe our esteemed guest is only going to be with us for a few minutes, so I certainly can shut up for a few more minutes. Paula, take it away.
Oh my gosh, you guys are hilarious. Well, I'll be honest. So I know you guys have definitely been in the orb and the highly like 1 foot in this reality, another foot in the higher dimensional realities. And it's interesting because as Lowell was stating, I had my big experience with the folks from Inner Earth, in particular Talos, right, making their awareness known, and had my whole, summer in 2022 completely immersed in that experience, both in sleep state as well as wake state, writing a book that was I was definitely in another dimension the whole time. And then finishing the book and then coming into really what I felt was, oh gosh, just dense 3D. I was thrown into 3D work at a very 3D work environment, office environment, etc. And I thought, what the heck? Was I kicked out of heaven? Like, was I not good enough? Like, what happened? Like, they changed their mind? What's going on? Why am I back here? Super 3D. And what's interesting is I've been working through this and just sort of letting go, right? Like there's, you hear a lot of spiritual teachers or channelers say, you don't really understand what's going on. So just go where you're guided, what's your highest passion, even though it doesn't make sense logically. And what's interesting is I've been introduced to some, I would call people that are in the 3D world, but what they're introducing into the world is very 5D, very collaborative. Like, you know what? We need to move from this sort of high competition and we got to get money at all cost and throwing employees and clients to the wayside in this pursuit of the dollars so we can stay alive as a company and whatever. And what I've been finding is that there is this big movement to putting employees first, and how that's very financially profitable. Like, that was thought that if you're putting employees first and clients first, you're sacrificing something on the finance side. And so I have been coming awake to that and helping to implement that. And I think what a nice bridge to behaving and living like they do in Inner Earth already. It's the person, they say, I have a passion for this. I would like to do this. Along with that, I know I have a responsibility to the greater good, and I perform certain tasks for the greater good, and then for myself. And it's so harmonious, and I feel we are moving in that direction, albeit chaotically and with some challenge. And it is, you know, it's a beautiful path, but it's it definitely feels like, you know, on the battle lines, on the
It
front
feels like
line.
you're riding a bike down a train track and you're hitting every trestle. You feel every one as you go along, but
Yeah.
you're eventually going to get to your destination.
Right. Yeah, it's very front line, very, very frontline pragmatic, but I see the path to 5D, and I just wonder if it's not going to be, you know, hitting all those trusses along the way on the train track, and then all of a sudden it's going to turn into a bullet train. Like, whoa, quantum leap into a high technology where you're riding on air, you know, but you have to go through the hard bumps first.
Well, what you're correlating to me is the differences between my experiences that now I recognize in 3D that I've been living in all this time, and now I see it for what it was. Dense, just laden with things I need to learn, as opposed to this higher dimensional platform that I straddle. Because you just heard me talk about it and how I was reluctant to come back to this density because of all the qualities that I don't have to deal with in the next realm. This has always been an experiment in duality, but Earth is through learning 3D lessons. We're just kind of cleaning things up here while her consciousness rises. But, you know, I can't say, well, I can't say with great certainty. I'm certainly not the only one who has been activated into another level of understanding beyond what I thought I knew. And just look at everybody that's here in the tribe, first of all, and their individual precious perspectives of their part in all of this. The lovely part I think about more often than not is that every person has a different gift. Man, how precious is that? And nobody was meant to be like Dave. You know, it would be lovely to understand palametry and the types of things that's inserted in Dave's head. But that's not where my focus is. Yes, I would love to understand it, but as I said before, I don't need to know it. We got Dave. That's the role that he plays for us. And when the time comes, you know, he'll sit up and he'll do what he's supposed to do. And the rest of us marvel at things that we can't do. That's what I love best about the tribe coming together. And this week, there were two more people that were certainly part of us who found their way here too. Back to you, Paula.
I love it. You know, that's exactly it. I feel like what's worked in the past is not going to work for the future. And then there is this decision we all have to make to either move into what the future is, or I guess you can choose not to. But it is a different way of living. But I love to see that it appears that there's a path to say, oh, the 3D that we lived in before, the rules are changing. That's not going to be successful for the future. It's not going to be financially profitable as we move away from money, right? And I'm excited to see it unfold, and I guess I'm excited and nervous to be in the trenches of working with it as opposed to observing it from the distance. But I feel like it gives us all hope. I feel like it's hopeful, and I'm excited to see things unfold. I'm watching things, and you'll have to admit, so many people are coming awake so quickly. To your point, 2 people that joined the tribe, just think of the mother load that's on its way as things fall apart and you say, what's going on? I need to look at something different. I need to open my mind because all the rules that I thought were in play, it's not working anymore. And then your platform and several other people's platform is going to be available, and they're going to find it in the most synchronistic way, just like I did. And that's our purpose, isn't it? To be
Yes.
available to that. So it's coming. It's like it's that train you were talking about, and they're going to be coming in bumpy. And
Look, it came into us that way. Shouldn't we expect that it's going to happen to
bumpy.
others? We'd be
Absolutely.
foolish not to think that we were the only ones that this was ever going to impact.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. So it's just sort of the way showers, you have to go through it, and then, all right, let's make it easier for other people as they come on board. And so I think it's fabulous. I'll have to say, connecting the dots backwards, it makes sense, but when you're going through it, it can be a little disparaging.
You don't get clarity until down the road a little bit.
Yeah.
That whole assimilation process I know that I push out there because historically it's taken me 3 days to figure out. I felt a shift, but I really didn't understand what it was. And then some of the other pieces come together until 3 days later, you see the whole fabric of what just happened. So what you're talking about is just the fact that we have a realization that that's going on, because it's going on for everybody, whether they're paying attention to the process or not, is going to determine, how quickly they, first of all, connect with the information and are aware that it's even out there. And then I was just thinking while you were explaining, the conditions that you're in, how we have not plateaued. We have not gotten to the end of whatever we were supposed to see, experience, believe. We are not to the end of it yet. So I am a perpetual student as I'm going on listening to the people in the tribe who showed up with new things that happened this week. That's why I'm so animated when I hear about experiencers talking about what happened to them now. I have zero time to reread books that were done before. We've already gleaned out of that information what we were supposed to get. But to continue to hold that up as an expert, too much evolution has happened since that book was written and published. And now to think that circumstances haven't changed. And the fact that everybody's on a different journey with different lessons, I don't know that my journey and my lessons are to be found in a book. That's my point. Now, I can't rule that out for others because there's a certain amount of things that were meant to cross our path to kind of fill in the dots along the way. And so, like you say, when you finally get far enough down the road that you can look back at what happened, that's the only time you can put this into perspective. Because while extraordinary things are happening to you in the moment, it's extraordinary. I don't get it right away. It just takes some time. And so, wow, I can rant on this all day about the magnificence of the things that you experience when you straddle dimensions like that. But until you're there, until you understand really vibration and your individual frequency, my ears are, I'm falling on deaf ears in a lot of cases. They'll get it. I did. Took me a while, but here we are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, You don't have to know what's going on, but it's helpful to just have faith that it will be obvious later. And the
Well,
faith.
we're humans. We
Yeah,
want to know.
it's okay to
We
feel those
need
feelings.
proof.
Yeah, and
Yes.
it's okay to feel those feelings of frustration and confusion. That's a very, I would say, appropriate response, and it's okay. Staying there is misery, but feeling it, letting it go, let it burn itself out as an emotion, I think is helpful to help you move on. And just staying in the awareness, is key. So yeah, if anybody's suffering out there, whew, been there, done that.
I hate to say this, but it's always self-inflicted.
It is, it's
We
just lack of
create those
awareness.
circumstances and
Yeah.
invite them in our direction. Whatever we put out
Yeah.
is
And
what we get back in return.
it's just the lack of awareness that's suffering. Lack of knowledge is
Yes.
really what the suffering is. Lack of faith is suffering because everything works out in the long run.
Well,
Yes.
Paula, I had mentioned to Lowell yesterday that my Beyond Earth sentient friends who keep in touch with me psychically, they sent me some interesting stuff while Lola and I was talking. And, I never considered myself a channeler, but now here I am listening to them speak whenever they want to speak until I tell them to stop. But they said, while I was talking to Lola yesterday, they said, tell them that we're befuddled. We are befuddled why your species makes your life so complicated and so toxic. Just find some joy and some happiness, and then you'll find some calm, and then you'll be able to activate all those wonderful gifts that all of you have. So, really stop making your life so complicated and stop toxifying yourselves. And they're right. It was such a nice little short piece of info.
What a beautiful message.
Right?
Yeah.
Just short and sweet.
Yeah. And no matter what you're in, right? Just look
Right.
for the joy somewhere in it and it'll take you to the next step. It'll
And
be
it's interesting.
happier.
One of the first things you brought up was, not looking to the past. And this is a topic that, I covered in my own belligerence yesterday. Just, don't send us stuff that's 25 years old. I mean, there's obviously one of the things that I didn't say during my rant was that there's obviously wonderful, wonderful things that all of us know are there that we can draw upon. The wonderful writings of teachers like Alan Watt, and the wonderful things that come from people like Gurdjieff and Pythagoras and Plato and Shakespeare and Ralph Waldo Emerson. And there's been so many wonderful human beings that have come and gone and left us some piece of beautiful, clear thinking. And one of my favorite British poets was a fellow named Robert Browning. He lived during the Victorian period. And he said, a man's reach must exceed its grasp, else what's a heaven for? And, there's so many little beautiful pieces of information. And I think that all of us want to be an altruist. We want to be as close to who we're supposed to be. And the thing about falling asleep and not staying awake, this is something that was this was looked at by people like Gurdjieff, P.D. Ouspensky, Hawking, Teilhard de Chardin. These are all thinkers from the recent past, the 19th century and early 20th century, who were very concerned about us getting these high ideals and these lofty visions, but then just falling back to our old selves. And there was always a reference to the old self. And so this morning, before Lowell turned on the recorder, I just said, God, Lowell, if this was you and I talking and I was myself 7 years ago, it would be full of reactionary statements about global politics, reactionary statements about social issues, whether they're made up or whether they're real. And I would be using a lot more colorful expletives and not being careful about my thinking and not being considerate about getting the right message across. I think all of us, no matter how professional we used to be, still suffered from the same thing that the folks that haven't ascended yet suffer from, which is our old selves. And I think this is something that we have to consider after making the change that we've made, to be committed to being honest and only discussing our experiences and staying in our lanes, right?
I resonate with that. Yep.
Absolutely. I think what you said there is to get into a high vibration by reading some of these wonderful quotes. And I couldn't agree with you more. All of those people that you mentioned have inspired me at some point or another and still inspire me. But, the rubber meets the road where you can hold on to that in the thick of the mess. It's like, okay, I am really in it. This is very real and difficult and painful. Now let me try to remember that quote from Watts. Let me try to remember Browning in that. Let me, and it's I don't know if it's good or bad, but it resonates. When we read it, it resonates with us so strongly. Like, it just lights up our body. It's this cellular experience. But it's almost like you have to look at one quote repetitively every day for at least, what do they say, 21 days to make a habit? Listen
Well, I think,
for 21 days. And then when you're
absolutely.
by an event, it should come in and serve you, right? Like, you have to put it to your heart. And so then it's like, let this moment be served with something that I practiced in the past to help me today. And that's
I
been
had
saving
yeah,
grace.
I had a wonderful experience when I was 17. I graduated high school early and spent a couple years at Occidental in Pasadena studying ethnic music. And then when I was 18, I went to India and lived on an ashram for 6 months studying Sanskrit and Hindu liturgy and the Shakti Pad and the Vedic texts, and learning how to play a whole myriad of different Indian North Hindustani instruments, tabla and sitar and sarod and tambura and all these different fabulous things. But I learned how to sing, and I sing a lot of sacred hymns privately. I have a lot of friends that are from North India that are professional musicians. And then I came back from that and I went up to Northern California, and I got involved with this really amazing girl named Nina. And as it turned out, her dad was Wallace McDonald, and Wally McDonald ran the URI, the Ukiah Research Institute, for some period of about 30 years. And it was a theological think tank, and they had over 10,000 books in a huge Victorian house. And his father was William Colt MacDonald, the famous Western writer. And Wallace was a very wonderful, charming, always happy older guy, big, tall, bald guy in his late 60s and 70s. And they invited me to stay at the Ukiah Research Institute because it was a huge Victorian house. There was 8 bedrooms with their own bathrooms and kitchenettes. It was massive. And so I was really lucky. So I checked in there. It turned out, I found out several years later that all of my studies and time spent at the URI, and that's a play on words for URI. But it was also a little funny too, because it was a play on words for Yuri. And a couple of the members were from Czechoslovakia that were ex-communists. One of the members was a psychic research teacher from Denmark. All these amazing professional older people. And there were some young people there, and I was one of them. And they had no problem at all with, Nina and I cohabitating and living in one of the apartments together. But I had to study. And so one of the things that they made all of us do, and even the older folks that were there, is we had to read a minimum of 3 books a month and have complete cohesive knowledge of the intent of the author, and also have a firm understanding of the meaning of each one of those books. And so I was forced to read things that they never produced in public education when I was younger. And so by the time I was 19, I was reading everything by Plato and Socrates and Shakespeare and Ralph Waldo Emerson. So this idea about remembering quotes so that you can utilize them, this is where I'm going with this, is that Wallace taught me, God, he was a fascinating guy. He was Admiral Nimitz' tennis instructor during World War II in Pearl Harbor. And so Wallace got through the war by playing tennis with Admiral Nimitz' wife every day until he and the rest of the officers showed up, and then he'd play tennis with them. It was a real tough way to get through World War II. But he said that if you read a book and you think you understand it, read it again. And then you'll really get it. And he said with literature and studying, whether it's a foreign language, an ancient language, or your modern spoken word, if you do something 2 or 3 or 4 times, then you'll develop an easygoing pattern and relationship with that which you're trying to understand. And this advice stuck with me because, like, there's a lot of fantastic quotes out there, but in order to be able to look back into your mind to pull forward some kind of helpful information to help you get through your day, the best one that I ever memorized, and there's some really good ones. I liked a lot of the weird sort of pre-Victorian German philosophers. They were very hardcore, like, well, anyways. So Ralph Waldo Emerson used to say, finish each day and be done with it. You've done what you could. Tomorrow, some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow is a new day. You shall begin it well and serenely. And so Ralph Waldo Emerson was really up there for me as far as people that had good advice. And sure enough, everything that they were talking about from the past is the same, because all of these great thinkers and all these great theologians and philosophers and writers knew the one thing that humans suffer from the most isn't greed, isn't sloth, avarice, gluttony, or any of that. It's this terrible habit that humans have of recommitting themselves to their same old behavior and doing the same thing over and over again. So we get these moments of highlighted wisdom and these moments of epiphany, even Sartori's, but then we go back to our old self. So if you read something over and over again and memorize it, well, then you can find that you can memorize 50, 60, 70 different quotes. And God, I'd hate to bore people by sitting down for 3 hours and listening to me recant every quote I've ever memorized. But there's so many that are out there that are helpful, but you just have to reread them until you memorize them. And then when you memorize something that deeply, then it really starts to have extra meanings. It's much like learning the kind of new sciences and metaphysical studies that our friends from below and our friends from above have got us involved in now. So I'm nothing like I used to be 7 years ago. I'm trying to be conscientious of my own behavior and my own thoughts and words while I'm being considerate and kind to those others that are expressing theirs. So, we don't want to say, oh, just forget about all the stuff from the past. Don't give me any information that I already know. I've been on a flying saucer. That's not what it's about. But think about those unique experiences as well. And now, after these new experiences I've had by like being taken away off this planet, how does that fit in to what's available for me for spiritual growth and intellectual stimulus here amongst my fellow men? What is available now? What can I find? What can I see that's something that I wouldn't have found or seen had I not had this experience of being taken away from my home planet? So there's all sorts of ways to start reimagining and re-looking in the society and what's available in society to help build on only the goodness and help build on only the wonderful things that we've learned. And we don't always refer back to the community or the overwrought word lexicon that all of us in tribes seem to enjoy so much. We also are looking for new facts and new foundational wisdom and information that's current, that's coming from human beings who are far brighter and far more awakened than we are. And so this is part of that beautiful process of reminding folks out there, yeah, we know what we're talking about because we are in our own lane. And so that's why I don't study other stuff, because they've given me so much. Lowell mentioned polymetry. Listen, Lowell, when I come out to Arizona, I am definitely putting together a module where I can talk about beyond Earth sentient technology. So if there's doctors or physicists or people who are scientifically handy or people that have a good grasp on, mechanics and engineering, please come, because I'm going to be talking about some really fascinating stuff that will knock your socks off and has never been heard of before on Earth. And these are all things that we could build and do. So, I think we can look forward to the adventure of further intellectual stimulus and further knowledge just by staying awake and not going back to our old selves. So that's all I have to say, Paula.
Well, that was a lot of conditioning that you had to overcome, because really the nature of what we think we're supposed to do and the conditioning that we received was to make our journey here more of a service to self. I want to find out what's in it for me. I want to gain my own wealth. And, there's very little thought in that arena that goes to other people and their contributions. When this awakening kicked in for me, and it wasn't that I wasn't aware of other people and didn't have a heart for them all my life, but something leveled up at a point when I think I hit, right around age 60. And there was just my journey. That's when it happened to kick in for me. I tend to see everything from the perspective of how I'm connected to that person on the other side of the table, whether they're speaking in terms that I totally agree with, or whether they're talking about things that I don't resonate with. I am open to whatever their experience is. If they got here, there was a reason that they got my attention in the first place. So I don't want to rule out anything that doesn't make sense to me. But here is where you start to discern the differences on where you're taking in your information. And when you see the others, coming from the service to self camp, yeah, we've had all we need of that. It's still our 3D impulse. Like Dave said, when he considers himself belligerent, that's our 3D reflex. That's who we are. That's how I express myself. But at the same time, he's already talked about how over the last several years, his reaction has softened, should we say? That it's more mindful before he responds. And that just came from another place where it was filtered through love. I don't know any other way to say that. It got filtered through love, and now when Dave thinks about it, it's not this horrible thing that everybody else made it out to be. He sees through it.
Thank you. Filtered through love is such a great way to say that. I had really wonderful guides and parents and family members, and we also had some bums in our family. I think my family's no different than anyone else's. You have great people and you have sort of not so great people. But yeah, filtered through love and received through love. I had a lot of stern advice, my grandfather being who he was, my dad, and then my stepdad who raised me. So there was a lot of directives. And when you're a boy turning into a teenager, turning into a young man, the kind of people that I had in my family were always really keen to make sure that I was keeping my nose clean, polishing my shoes, getting a haircut, getting to school on time, that kind of stuff, because I was from a real L7 family. Even though my mom was an animal activist and an artist and a hippie, dad and grandpa and grandma and everybody else were L7, baby. Square.
Yeah, they were.
So,
Look, bless their hearts, they were conditioned by the people that were conditioned before them. They only did what they knew, and they did the best they could with what they had.
Oh, listen, my brother and I were very good boys, and I never got into trouble when I was a young man. I never, would drink and drive or, get arrested or any of that stuff just because of the nature of the way I was raised. And those things I had to let go of after I had gone to the URI, and then after I'd sent myself to college and then to university. I had to force myself to get rid of those because I found that all of this good, stern advice was actually like some personal guidebook that I decided to pick up and use like it was a reference guide that I could pull this kind of shit with other people. I had to get rid of all that. And it was interesting to find out that I had been working on that very program of releasing the paradigm of my upbringing. And then Kim Jim showed up. So I was on the right track. And then I got all of that love from him, all that love. And boy, his energy was so weird. He was like mommy, daddy, girlfriend, and brother. It's just so weird. I mean, talk about Heros Gamos. Those guys nail it. Paula, you still here?
I'm still hanging around. I couldn't leave this conversation. Absolutely. Yeah.
Good.
Well, we wanted to credit you for bringing it up in the first place.
Yeah, paradigms are key. Paradigms is our conditioning. Kind of shows us we're a little bit of a programmed species, right? You can program us for the most part any way you can. Why not?
Not a little bit.
towards
We
peace
can
and
program
love?
ourselves. That
Oh, you
whole
can
idea of thoughts
reprogram.
become things, there is the fundamental thought behind exactly what you're talking about.
Absolutely. We're a little bit AI-ish. I'm sure people would love to hear that. Well,
Yeah, right.
oh
That's spooky. Are you getting all conspiratorial on us now?
gosh, is that conspiratorial? Is that what they're saying?
No, I
Well,
don't.
if you look at it this way, if you look at AI as some program that takes advantage of pre-existing information, it has its own Akashic records that it sorts through. So do you. You
Yeah.
have your own Akashic records that you've been calling on and have been dormant for a while that you kind of forgot about.
Yeah, like the flowers, they're programmed
Yeah.
to bloom a certain way.
But
It's negative.
AI can't have original thoughts. They're not
Oh,
set
you
that
have
way.
to.
We
That's
do.
great. Paula, that you nailed it. Flowers that are programmed to bloom a certain way. And that is a genetic distinction that every form of beauty that Gaia can support, every beautiful form of life that Gaia can support, shall be given its own unique way of expressing love.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful.
And you brought it to the table, babe.
Well, there you go. Yeah, we're all programmed, for something. So, yeah, why not for beauty? And if we're a little bit in control of it now that we're awake and aware, then program it for more beauty, more love, and have these experiences like you have with Kim Jin and use that as reference. Like, okay, this exists. I didn't know it existed. Let me program myself for more of that. I think it's wonderful.
Well,
Right.
not only has Dave been telling us it exists, he taught us the protocols on how to communicate with them. I've been paying attention, and all I can tell you is it freaking works. So if the rest of you have been listening and waiting for the opportunity to go out and try what Dave has suggested, I don't know what you're waiting for. Because if you really want to experience that contact, the conditions are so right. We were talking about the veil thinning and the veil lifting yesterday or the day, whatever day it was, we were hitting on that particular content. So there's a reason why we say things from the perspective we do now, because we didn't before. That is more of a getting to be kind of a global perspective. So I'm not surprised when other tribes shows up, however they get here, and we all just get another level of comfort because we all are speaking from the same perspective. The two people that came by this week have been in the spiritual community for at least 10 years, each one of them. And yet, when they heard me talking, like there's a whole nother plateau of, it's not enlightenment, awareness. I don't know, what do you want to call it? But something kicked in and they knew that there was an opportunity for them to level up. Not just for me, but they understand what the tribe represents and they're part of it. They have some important lives to spend. The young lady I was speaking to was in Vancouver, but she's from Brazil and has an effort there. She's a yoga instructor and all the things that come with that. She has dipped her toe in the spiritual side of things. And it was funny because I can tell that when she's been around these people and she's certainly achieved her, Reiki certification, if you want to look at it that way. So she has opened herself up to things beyond herself, other than just trying to be a healer. But when she was asking me about my experiences, she asked me, how do you protect yourself? Well, I know exactly where that was coming from because she has been open to things. And so she has almost a reluctance to open herself further because she's been around some people whose vibration was certainly lower. And she, caught wind of that. All of us empaths that are so open like that, after it happens a few times, the first question you ask yourself is, how do I protect myself moving forward? Because you do. But she is one who got here too. And that's why it just befuddles isn't the right word, but I heard Dave say it and it popped in my head. It's amazing to me the people that have been in this metaphysical community for a long time are now looking to us to reach the next levels. I certainly didn't see that coming, but here we are.
And I think I can sort of validate that in a way, because here's what's expected of people that have been studying and living within this new form of greater understanding of reality, the getting rid of all of those mental shackles of the training we'd received by the false system and the lies that we've been enduring for many thousands of years from all of the kingdoms and all of the kingships and governmentships that have been ruling us. Those notions of freedom were just sort of a carrot on a stick. And what we really are going to start having to see now, because Lowell and I stand in our own lane, and Lowell and I both bring something unique to community and to tribe. And this is whether you have a bullshit meter or not. We have our bullshit meter, and it's on high and it's running all the time. But what we're going to have to start seeing from community members and tribe is that, yeah, you're indeed a spiritual, wonderful, developed, higher human being. What are you bringing to the table? Because the program that I'm on is a little different than the ones that you guys might get from your dreams or from meditation. You see, they came and got me physically and then showed me science. They showed me their technology. They put their fingers on my face and my forehead, and they shared huge amounts of information that my mind was able to handle and store, because we have tons and tons of storage space left in our brains, you guys. So what I kind of am hoping to see for the next step of community and for tribeship is that our members and the people that we love and communicate to right now is that you guys are going to start releasing some of your inner magic and inner works and turning those into the reality of your life, and then sharing the achievements and the new discoveries. You see, I was given CLPT through the very lesson of watching the light flash, and then they showed me the whole system through flashing lights, and then they took me on board. Remember, I was seeing ships for quite some time before it was agreed that they were actually going to come into my home and collect me. There's been a lot of protocols, a lot of little rules to observe, and a lot of things to train me. Out of the entire experience, I was the risk. I was the most dangerous person. I was the person that they had to work at making sure that I wasn't going to flip out when I was on the ship, that I wasn't going to deviate from what my heart was producing. And so there was a lot of work involved with sentient species from other worlds working with human beings. They have to make sure 110% that you're a safe person to bring onto their spaceship and take you away from your home world without you flipping out, because then they'll just knock you out and return you and things won't work out. So when I was returned and I stayed silent for 4 years about everything, it was only until everything had gelled that I started opening my mouth publicly about all the things that I was shown and all the lessons that I was taught, all the glimpses at humanity's future and the behavior of our solar system, behavior of our sun, and the behavior of our emotional chemistry, and how we can train our minds, not control them, but to train our minds to work with our inner spirit. Because your mind has been working on its own by all the garbage we were fed before all of us woke up. Everybody in tribe has awoken. That's why we're all here. That's why people are listening. That's why people share. And that's why they come out to see us when we have something to share or to express in a higher order. But it's time now for the community to start producing. Stay in your lane. Show us your gifts. What are you providing to Gaia? What are you providing to the spiritual betterment of humanity? What are you doing to help animals? What are you doing to communicate with angelic entities and species from other worlds who love us and who have always guided us? So it's your turn, you guys. Show us what's in your lane. Show us the gifts that you are providing. And these are things that when you share them, they will not only specifically help you with your personal ascension process, but also get you to the point where you start receiving ambassadorial awareness and ambassadorial training, and then you start behaving as an ambassador. I know I say things that are oftentimes cause you to shrug a little bit. Well, just turn on your bullshit meter. And, this isn't bullshit. I'm speaking from my lane. Everything that happened to me is 100% truth. Why else would I throw myself to the lions, except that I love lions and used to work with them? Why else would I throw myself into the snake pit, right? Because as soon as you say, oh yeah, I was taken away to a beautiful terraformed world, and I met I've seen hundreds of beautiful loving species, and they were all holding hands and they were all different. And, you don't get to keep your job as a Harvard professor. You don't get to keep your job as a policeman. You don't get to keep your job as somebody who's in social work if you come forward and start talking about this stuff. Because the society that thinks they're in control, well, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to eliminate your employment, your income, and all these things to make your life even more difficult. That's how hard it is to break from the system, so that you can be free to express your thoughts and feelings without any kind of repercussion from the system. But luckily, because there's so many of us that have woken up, the system is crumbling, and pretty soon it's going to be our turn. And when it is our turn, we're going to be able to change and manifest the beautiful things on this planet that have always should have been in place. No child should suffer. All pregnant mothers should have a safe, warm place to give birth. All men should be kind and strong and brave without being hateful and greedy and angry. You see, so the new world that we're coming into is going to be such a peaceful, wonderful place because all of us are waking up. So I'd really like to just sort of end my participation today by asking everybody in tribe to think about what we've spoken about and to start developing those gifts, and then show us. Ask us to come on to the podcast. Tell us what unique discoveries that you've made spiritually that have helped you overcome many things that were holding you back. So we're really looking forward to hearing about your individual personal spiritual growth, the wonderful things that you've discovered by staying in your lane, not falling for all the hyperbole and all the extra nonsense that's in the mainstream media. Because you guys know that's all controlled diatribe. It's all controlled narrative. Let's start exploring your personal, mystical, magical, and incredible experience, and then start sharing them, because I know all of you have that special gift that makes you a beautiful, sweet angel human. And all humans deserve to be angels living here on Earth. So that's kind of my goal, is eventually just to be somebody that when you come around me, you'll just feel better by being around me. And I know that sounds silly, but the only thing I can do for myself right now is to constantly be awake, constantly work on forgiveness, constantly have good thoughts, and good thoughts for other people who haven't woken up yet. Rather than saying something silly about them, let's send them compassion and vibrations of new celestial awakenings, right? So, Lowell, I'm going to turn off the video, but I'm going to stay on and listen to you guys. Peace out.
Well, we're going to let Paula kind of bring this to a conclusion, because really where you ended up was a lovely place to just kind of stop and let people, take it from there. Paula.
Oh, well, I was thinking to myself, Dave left such a beautiful place for us to be in, recognize it in yourself. And feels like the theme in this is, yes, you can awaken. Yes, you can be in a state of magnificent awareness, especially if you're walking in nature or you don't have any pressure on you in the moment. But really, the key thing is I think, find something inspirational that Lowell has said, or be inspired by his experience. Take a quote from Dave or look at his experience. Look to very high vibrational quotes, or even if you want to read a book, you wouldn't have to do all that. My invitation would be to use that as an anchoring point when things get challenging, when you're not standing in nature, when you're not in a position where you're comfortable and feeling the truth of yourself radiate through your body. And use that as leverage, use it as a tool, and come back to it and say, this is the truth. If you go back to it and you read it and you read it and you read it, or you listen to it over and over again, it will literally become part of your DNA and shift you so that when those moments come, you can immediately turn to it, just like you would turn to a first aid kit when you have an injury. So, and that will keep you there, because things are getting interesting. And the last thing I'd like to say is, Dave, you hit the nail on the head when you said it's the kingships. It is these governments, when they come in, they really throw a wrench into the harmony of natural law, universal law, that's pervasive. Because in truth, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because in my book, that's exactly what I said. There was a time in our traditional history books, I'm not saying it's all correct, but traditionally what we've been taught, there was this place called Mesopotamia. We came together as a people, and there was, based on the historical records that they present, it was an immense amount of harmony and natural cooperation and collaboration among people. And their advancements were very fast, including developing the axle and wheel system, which was more than 6,000 years ago. They didn't have a spoken language that they were aware of. They didn't have a written language. What they did have, which I believe is a strong sense of telepathic message between one another. I think that's how they were able to do some of the amazing things that they did from a higher perspective. But it was when the kingships came, when it was less than 600 years, completely tore apart the society. And
Well,
then
they removed your sovereignty.
they
They
removed
were the
sovereignty.
decision makers.
Yep.
So you were no longer really able and capable of expressing your free will, because somebody else told you what that was.
Somebody else told you what to do. More than that, they came together with corvée labor, which is come together and build a canal system, or come together and build a building together. And then you go on to your original passions, right? And then there's this thing that all the community can enjoy. Well, think about it. If the king decides whether something can be built or not, it's not done in a very high vibration, is it? It's very selfish oriented, which is what you said, Lowell. Everything is self-oriented, selfish. What do I want without this bigger picture of what's for the better, the good of all? And both of that, they go together beautifully, truly.
You're right. That was very much part of Earth's experiment, was service to self. How do I accomplish these things? How do I make my mark? How do I? Now, and that came during a time when we were separated at the hardcore. The physicality of us remained, and we kind of lived our lives that way, but our connection to anything broader than that, the metaphysical side of ourselves, we ignored. And so
Yeah.
here's the result of what happens when you're just continued to be exposed to other people's ideas instead of chasing your own thing. I want to emphasize when Dave talks about staying in our lane, it's important for people to think that they don't need to become an expert of every topic that crosses their path. When he reminds us to explore the things that make us special and our gift, that is your lane. That's what the tribe is counting on you, supporting you, cheering you on to figure out what it is that you do that the rest of us marvel at, because we can't. You don't need to be a perfect at everything. The tribe as a collective, and that's when we grow and we see the next piece that comes to the puzzle. The collective is powerful. Moving things from that perspective and that dimension, I can see how manifestation gets much easier than our idea of what is easy for manifestation, because our minds are all working in that direction. We're finally coming to the same place all collectively in our minds, where we understand what Dave and Paula have to offer the tribe. And I know I don't have to replicate it. I know what powerful gifts I carry, and I just lend that to their efforts as well. But look at what we can do when there are a number of us in the room. We've all got our individual set of gifts that are like no one else. And when we start to embrace that, here's where the earth just tripped up for so long, because we've been conditioned to do things in another way, like everybody else. And as I pointed out, it was the way that we had all been trained. Now, for whatever reason, something kicked in and that changed it. I think, Paul was referring back to some other times in history a moment ago, and it makes me think of how rapidly over the last 100 years our technologies have improved. Looking for those thousands of years when, we were building things with stone and grass, and all of a sudden we have technologies to do what we can do now with communication through the internet, the way that it's hardwired. Look at how life changed in the last 100 years. And we're kind of right now at that particular peak. I don't know that that's anything to be proud of or brag about, but it's elevated technologies than anything we had before. Things that we didn't understand that came to our wherewithal. I think that there is a demonstration of how what we really can do. And that was the thrill with humans in the first place. We still have emotion, which drives our creativity. Every realm, the Lemurians are thrilled to communicate with us again and share their technologies with us, because they've already elevated to a place where they're not that emotional. No, they get it. We're all connected to one another. Peace, love, compassion, unity. That's our bread and butter. But we still live here in a place that isn't that.
Before Paula and you say goodbye, I'm sorry, Paula, you're so fascinating, and you brought something up about the people of Mesopotamia, and I wanted to let you know that I'm pretty sure that Aristotle based his model of Nicomachean ethics on that civilization of Mesopotamia, of what was good for our fellow human. And Nicomachean ethics deals with getting a completely honest and loving piece of information out to everybody, not just one or two people. And it also includes the idea that if one isn't careful to be heard properly, then the person standing 10 feet away will misinterpret what you've said and repeat it. And then the person standing 10 feet away from him will hear what he said, misinterpret it, and repeat it. So you can be standing on the mount and you can be talking about love and all the beautiful, wonderful things that there are that we can cherish and hold and renew and experience together. But we have to remember the person who's 20 feet away and 40 feet away. That's why it's so, so very important to realize that if we don't communicate the one message of love and compassion and awakening, if that's not clear, then a lot of this is for nothing. And so we have to make sure that what, like Lowell says, that we bring everybody up to the same level so that we can be in the now, like Robin says. So Paula, once again, you're such a wonderful person to spend time with. And of course, Lowell, you know how I feel about you. You're just an amazing dude. And God bless all you guys. I got to go now, though. So peace
Thanks.
out.
Well, we're going to let Paula close this with her thoughts. And what a blessing. She was here for the whole time this time.
Well, I just want to leave it where it is. To your point, just, spread more love. I feel like love is the answer to everything. And, what else can you say? I think this
We'll
whole
leave it at
hour
that.
has been about expressing love for one another and everybody else.
That's a good fundamental message. So we'll leave it there. Thank you all for whoever's listening to this, and we'll see you again soon.